Introduction to Star Wars. www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Come and read more of my works on our website. https://www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Chapter 1, Brothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Haicheng, Guanghua Street in Chunhai District, is an old residential area with dilapidated and cramped streets. Every rainy day, there are puddles of water on the streets, and the low buildings on both sides of the street are also mottled. The only thing worth appreciating may be the tall trees that have grown for countless years every few meters. The lush tree canopy blocks the direct sunlight, making the entire street cool and pleasant even in the midday sun. There are also vines and plants crawling all over the walls of old houses, giving this dilapidated street a unique charm. In the technologically advanced era of the 1930s, it was rare to see old neighborhoods like Guanghua Street in a metropolis like Haicheng. Most of the residents here were also elderly people. A tall and robust young man walked in quickly outside the street, greeting his acquaintances as he walked. Xiao Yu is back. Yeah, hello Grandma Wang. Have you had lunch? I've eaten it, I've just finished eating it. Can't I come out and bask in the sun to clear my appetite? Then sit down first, I'll go home and cook for Xiaoqiu first. Go ahead, go ahead. Oh, by the way, I saw Xiaoqiu playing over there in the square before. I'm not sure if he's back home. If he hasn't, you can go over there and take a look. Okay, Grandma Wang, I understand. Thank you. After speaking, the young man named Xiao Yu continued walking towards the depths of the street. Ah, what a good child. It's just too pitiful. I'm still a child and have to take care of my younger brother. The old lady named Grandma Wang sighed helplessly as she looked at the back of the young man who had passed away. The young man named Xiao Yu by Grandma Wang is called Li Wuyo. He is not very old and has just turned 18 this year. He is a senior student in Haicheng No. 1 Middle School. 2 years ago, when I was in my freshman year of high school, my parents both died in a car accident, leaving only a small amount of savings in a house in this old neighborhood, as well as my 8-year-old younger brother Li Wuqiu. From the name, it can be seen that parents hope their brothers can grow up worry-free for a lifetime. However, things are unpredictable, and who would have thought that a car accident would prematurely burden the burden of life on the then underage carefree body. Fortunately, the old neighbors around us were very enthusiastic and took good care of these two brothers. After a brief period of grief, Wuyo quickly regained his composure. In addition to his studies, he worked odd jobs and the savings left by his parents also supported the lives of the two brothers. Today is the weekend, and high school seniors have never had a day off, so Worry-Free came back to make lunch for their younger brother after school at noon. Pushing open the door and looking at the empty room, Wuyo couldn't help but shake his head and smile helplessly, cursing and saying, "This stinky kid, when you play, you won't be at home." After losing parents, Worry-Free cannot be worry-free, but worry-free is truly worry-free. Apart from crying all day to find parents at the beginning, Worry-Free quickly adapted to the days without parents and restored the nature of children. And as we age, we become more and more mischievous. As the saying goes, even dogs at 7 or 8 years old find it annoying, which refers to children at this age who have no worries. After laughing and cursing, Wuyo took off her coat, rolled up her sleeves, and skillfully cooked rice, washed vegetables, and cut vegetables. Before long, 2 dishes with perfect color, aroma, and flavor were served on the table. She looked at the countdown of the rice cooker, and it took more than 10 minutes to cook the rice. She stretched out her head from the kitchen window and looked down the street, but still couldn't see her younger brother's figure. Helpless, Wuyo had to put on his coat and walk towards the door. It seemed that he would have to wait until it was dark to expect his younger brother to play enough and go home. Although the street is old, when it was originally planned, a piece of land was still left aside to build a small square for residents to use for daily activities. This small square is also the main place for nearby children to play. As soon as we walked out of the house, we saw a group of children chasing and playing on the square. From afar, we could see one of the slightly taller children arguing with other friends. That taller child was naturally the younger brother Wucho. Seeing this, Wucho walked up quickly and was not worried about his younger brother being bullied, but rather afraid that his brother would bully someone else's child, because Wucho inherited the excellent genetic system of the Li family. Gu is much stronger than his peers, and this kid has a sweet mouth like wiping honey, which makes his neighbors, uncles, aunts, grandparents, and grandparents dote on this child without parents. Therefore, when encountering a dispute with a child, adults usually teach their own children a lesson, and over time, they become the little tyrant among their peers. Only when he bullies others, other friends dare not bully him. Xiao Chou, are you bullying the children again? Wu Yu scolded her younger brother in a loud voice. Brother! You're out of school. Seeing my brother coming, I didn't have the heart to continue arguing with my friends. I turned around and threw myself onto my brother's body, looking up at his cute smile on his face. Don't pretend to be innocent with me. I saw you arguing with the children from a long distance. No, we just had normal communication, don't you think so? She turned her head and looked at her friends. Although not visible, Wu Yo is certain that at this moment, the younger brother's eyes must be filled with a sense of threat. Zhaoshuyuan.com. Yes, brother Wu Yo, we're not arguing with Xiao Chou, we're not arguing. A group of children immediately explained in unison. Alright, as long as we didn't argue, Xiao Chou should go home for dinner. You guys should play first. Wu Yo didn't bother about anything anymore, after all, they were all children. It's normal to play and have a few words together, and even when they grow up, recalling the reasons for their arguments may even evoke some nostalgia. You don't even know you're going home to eat when you're playing, do you? Wu Yu scolded Wu Yu on the way home, pulling Wu Yu away. Although Wu Yo is not angry and does not oppose his younger brother and his friends playing together, children's education still needs to be taken seriously. Everything cannot be left to his temperament. If he develops bad habits, it will be difficult to change them. I made a mistake, brother. In the future, I will remember the time, eat and sleep at the right time. Wu Cho obediently admitted his mistake and lowered his head, his lips slightly pursed. There's still time to learn. Although I knew that this kid's expression was mostly fake, my heart softened and I couldn't bear to scold him too much. Yes, there's still time to learn. The clever little ghost seemed to know that his brother's lecture had come to an end. He quickly agreed and immediately put on a cute smile, asking, Brother, what do we have for lunch? A scrambled egg with tomatoes, a carrot and sea rice soup. Hurry up and leave, the dishes should cool down later. After speaking, he quickened his pace and walked towards home. Oh my goodness! There's no meat again. Brother, wait for me. After murmuring in a low voice, Wu Yu shouted at his back and followed up bouncing and jumping. Chapter 2. Pendant. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Brother, do you only have half a day of classes tomorrow? How about we go shopping tomorrow afternoon? After dinner, Wu Yu was tidying up the table, and Xiao Wu Yu, like a fart bug, turned inside and out behind Wu Yu and said. Tomorrow. Yes, I only have half a day of classes tomorrow, but we don't have time to go shopping tomorrow afternoon. Have you forgotten what day tomorrow is? Wu Yu paused for a moment when she heard her younger brother's words, but still spoke out as a reminder. What day tomorrow? I'll go take a look. After finishing speaking, Wucho ran towards the calendar by the door. When Wucho ran to the calendar and flipped through it before returning, the smile on her face had already disappeared. Lowering his head and whispering, Brother, I understand. Tomorrow we're going to see our parents. Well, just remember, but we can go early. If you have enough time when you come back, I can take you to watch a movie. Seeing my younger brother's low expression and worry-free, I felt a heartache and reached out to touch his head, saying softly, Okay, watch a movie. I want to watch Spider-Man 6. The children's emotions are falling and rising quickly. When they hear the movie they have been interested in for a long time, they can immediately get excited. Seeing my younger brother's happy expression, I couldn't help but recall the scene when my parents promised to take me to see the Spider-Man Hero Expedition when I was young. At that time, my performance was very similar to my younger brother now. Thinking of my parents, my worry-free mood instantly faded away. Now that my parents have left the two brothers forever, tomorrow is my parents' anniversary, so I naturally want to take my younger brother to pay my respects. Alright, I should go back to school now. You'll be good at home this afternoon, don't be naughty. Looking at your watch, Worry-Free said to Worry-Free, who was excited and bouncing around, I know, brother. Don't worry, I will be obedient. Wucho responded to Wucho's words while still bouncing non-stop. Without further ado, Wuyu put on her coat and walked out of the house. Afternoon classes, school breaks, hourly work, dinner, study, sleep, wake up, breakfast, and go to school, repeating the countless times of life in the past 2 years. After finishing Sunday morning classes, we went home and had lunch with our younger brother before taking a car with us to the burial ground where our parents were buried. The cemetery has already forbidden burning paper and other open fire worship methods, so Wuyo just brought a bunch of flowers with his brother, opened a bottle of baijiu his father liked to drink most and sprinkled it on the tombstone. After that, Wuyo left his brother alone to whisper with his parents in front of the tombstone. And I walked to a stone step more than 10 meters away from the tombstone and sat down. This position will not disturb the whispers of my younger brother and parents, and you can also see my younger brother's figure to prevent him from running around and getting lost. When his parents just passed away, Wu Cho kept clamoring for his parents all day, so he told Wu Cho what he had to say in front of his parents' grave. They would definitely hear it. Therefore, whenever the two brothers came to worship his parents, Wu Cho would drive his brother away. In Wu Chao's words, he whispered to his parents and couldn't listen to his brother. It seems that this kid not only wants to express his longing to his parents, but also has to tell his brother about it. Looking up at the surrounding environment, Wuyo took a long breath of fresh air and took out a small pendant from his chest. It was an axe-shaped pendant made of jade and stone, with a strange shape. In fact, the entire form of this pendant is a small axe, which is said to be a family heirloom. Previously, when my parents were with me, my father wore it with me. Later, in that car accident, I was hit and the axe and handle broke. Wuyo decided to put a rope on both parts and half of my brother wore it, which can be considered a kind of nostalgia for my parents. When I think about my parents, Wuyo usually wears it with me. Take out this pendant and take a look. This pendant has a very smooth jade texture and a particularly delicate touch. It seems that my father often played with it back then. Rubbing the pendant in his hand and looking at his younger brother's figure, he saw him lying in front of his parents' tombstone, with a small hand wrapped around his mouth and whispering, occasionally turning his head to take a glance at himself. A warm smile appeared on his worry-free face. Mom and Dad, the spirit in heaven can rest in peace now. I will definitely take care of my younger brother and let him grow up happily without worries. Suddenly, a burning sensation arose from the pendant in his hand. Worry-free, who was lost in thought, shook and released his grip on the pendant. Fortunately, it was tied with a rope that prevented it from falling to the ground. Worry-free raised its hand and looked up at the pendant without any abnormalities, then looked down at it in confusion and cautiously touched it with its fingers. Everything was normal. Where did the burning sensation just come from? Wuyo became even more puzzled. Wuyo had someone identify it and found that it was just an ordinary piece of jade. It was just something passed down from one's own family, which made it appear precious. If it were sold for money, it would probably cost only 1 or 2,000 yuan. There shouldn't be anything special about it. So what happened just now? Wuyo reached out and took the pendant off her neck. She carefully examined it in her hand for a while, and found no difference in the book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com. The hand feel returned to its original smooth and delicate state, with a hint of coldness. Is it an illusion? Wuyo couldn't help but doubt herself. Perhaps she was too engrossed just now and had some kind of illusion. After thinking for a while, there was still no clue. Wuyo looked at the time and put the pendant back on his neck before getting up and walking towards his younger brother. "Alright, Xiaoqiu, we should probably go now," said Wuyo as she walked behind her younger brother. "Ah. Are you leaving so soon? I still have a lot to say to my parents." Hearing my brother say he wants to leave, Wuqiu immediately pouted. "You've been talking for a long time, what's wrong? Don't you plan on watching a movie? If you don't watch a movie, we can leave later." "Ah. No need, I'll talk about the rest next time. Let's go, let's go. Mom and Dad, I'll come see you guys with my brother next time." After taking 2 steps with Wuyo, he turned back and said to the tombstone. "Xiaoqiu, do you usually feel anything wrong with your pendant, such as heat?" On the way out of the cemetery, Wuyo thought for a moment or spoke up to her younger brother and asked, "Fever? Brother, you're not catching a cold, are you? It's just a piece of jade, not an infinite gem. Fortunately, there are only 2. If there were 6, wouldn't you still want to make an infinite glove?" Upon hearing my brother's question, Xiao Wuqiu looked at him with disdain, as if looking at a mentally disabled person. I'm just casually asking, you know what you can do, but you're making fun of my brother," he said, lightly patting his carefree little head. After carefree teasing, my mood also relaxed. Yes, it's not an infinite gem. There's nothing magical about it, it should just be my own illusion. Chapter 3, Heroes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I took a car with my younger brother all the way back to the city center. After getting off at the nearest commercial district, I took my brother to the cinema with worry-free and opened the ticketing app on my phone to check the latest screening time. As I walked, I suddenly felt a tightness in my clothes. I looked down and saw that my younger brother Wuqiu had suddenly stopped. Following his gaze, Wuqiu's mouth slightly curled up. On the street side is an electrical appliance store, and there is a row of televisions on the storefront windows. The programs broadcasted inside are official. Recently, the TV station has repeatedly aired the 1995 version of the TV series, The Legend of the Condor Heroes, in the past many years. Although on-demand streaming on various video websites has become common nowadays, television stations have always been an irreplaceable communication platform, and only the rebroadcasting of television stations can create a wave of classic old TV dramas among children. Just like this time, because of the TV station's rebroadcast, the children around us, who are as old as Wuqiu, enjoy playing various role-playing games and often argue over who will become Yangguo. I suddenly remembered yesterday when I saw my younger brother arguing with his friends. It seemed like I had heard some words like Yangguo and Guojing from a distance. They had always been arguing about who would become Yangguo. Alright, stop watching. I've already bought the movie tickets, and there's still half an hour left for the opening. We need to hurry up, my younger brother interrupted Wuqiu, who was eagerly watching the TV screen. Oh. Upon hearing Worry-Free's words, Worry-Free reluctantly glanced at the TV screen and continued walking forward according to each one. By the way, Xiaoqiu, did you argue yesterday because of who you were earning to be Yangguo? Asked Wuyo curiously as she walked. Humph. That's so childish. What's good about Yangguo? Am I arguing with them about whether Yangguo is good or Guojing is good? Xiao Wuqiu replied disdainfully upon hearing his brother's words. Oh. Do you think Guojing is better than Yangguo? Why? I was just casually asking, but my younger brother's answer was a bit unexpected, which actually aroused worry-free curiosity. It's very simple. Who do you think Guojing is? What has he done? He's a great hero who works for the country and the people. He's a great hero, he works for the country and the people. It all sounds exciting. What about Yonghua? He's always being a auntie, and he doesn't have any masculinity. That's why I don't like him. Ha. It turns out that's the case. It seems that our family's little sorrow in the future wants to be a great hero for the country and the people. Upon hearing my younger brother's words, Wu Yu smiled and joked. Children all have a desire to become heroes, isn't it the same when they were young? That's it. When I grow up, I must become a hero. He said, his worry-free little fist trembling in his chest to show his determination. Okay. My brother supports you, but in today's society, it's impossible to become a hero by force. So, you need to study hard in the future so that you can have the ability to eradicate the strong and support the weak. Do you know that? My parents are no longer here, so the responsibility of constantly educating my younger brother naturally falls on me. Worry-free, like most parents in the world, also takes the opportunity to provide ideological education to my younger brother. Oh my goodness. How come we're getting back to studying again? Oh my. Time's running out, brother. Let's go quickly, don't delay the start of the movie. As soon as I heard my brother come to educate me again, Xiao Wuqiu let out a mournful voice and immediately changed the topic, running forward alone holding onto the corner of Wuqiu's hand. Hey, don't run around. Wait for me. Wuqiu shook her head and gave a bitter smile, quickly catching up. Not long after, the two brothers who were chatting and laughing arrived at the cinema located on the 5th floor of Wanda Plaza. Because today is the weekend, there are many people watching movies, including parents with children, young couples, and some classmates and friends who meet up. In short, at a glance, there was already a long queue near the ticket machine. After checking my watch, there are still 20 minutes left before leaving the venue. Judging the length of the queue, I should be able to collect movie tickets before the opening. Looking around, I saw the rest area and found that there were still a few vacant seats. So I led Wuqiu to an empty seat and said to my younger brother, you wait for me here first, I'll queue up to pick up the ticket, don't wander around. Okay brother, I won't wander around. You go ahead. After settling down my younger brother, Wuqiu walked alone to the back of the ticket queue and lined up, occasionally turning his head to look at his quiet brother sitting in the rest area seat. In no time, I was at the forefront of the queue without any worries, standing in front of the ticket machine and opening my phone to retrieve the ticket retrieval code. After scanning the machine spat out 2 movie tickets. Worry-free reached out and took out the tickets, turning around. His eyes lifted as he saw that his brother's original seat was already empty in the blink of an eye, his heart trembled. What about my younger brother? Before picking up the ticket, I saw him sitting there searching for the book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com. Why did my younger brother disappear in less than a minute? Worry-free, without considering anything else, quickly walked to my brother's original seat and looked around, but still couldn't see his figure. Xiao Chou. Xiao Chou. Wuqiu shouted anxiously twice, but did not hear her brother's response. At this moment, the worry-free heart is completely in disarray. If I lose my younger brother, how can I explain it to my deceased parents? After stabilizing his emotions for a while, Wuqiu turned his head and planned to ask the person next to him about the situation to see if they had noticed his brother's whereabouts. Until then, Wuqiu suddenly noticed something unusual. Just now, she was too concerned about her younger brother's figure and didn't pay attention to the crowd next to her. Now, when she was planning to ask them, she realized that the expressions of the people around her were so strange. They seemed to have been cast an immobilization spell by something, with expressions ranging from dullness to surprise. A girl covered her mouth with both hands and her eyes wide open in fear. A man next to her pointed to the spot where her brother had just sat, stuttering, he, as if he had seen something terrible. What's going on? What happened? Where's the boy sitting in that position just now? Seeing this eerie situation, Worry-free didn't care about any manners or impoliteness. He rushed to the stuttering man and shook his shoulders with both hands, anxiously asking. He. No. He's gone. The man stuttered as if he had been shaken back to his senses by worry-free force. Lost. What does that mean? Why was it lost? Where did it go? The man's endless answer made Wuyo even more anxious and continued to ask, he. Just now. At this moment, before the man could finish speaking, a loud bang suddenly rang out, followed by a wave of earth shaking. Chapter 4. Catastrophes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ah. There's an earthquake. Run. With loud noises and violent vibrations, the scene suddenly became chaotic as the crowd rushed towards the exit in panic. In just a few seconds, there was a constant roar, and the shaking of the mall became even more intense. Even the surrounding walls had cracked, and something was constantly falling from the air. Ingzi, there's an earthquake. Let's go. At this moment, the man who was held down by Wuyo's shoulder was suddenly shaken back to his senses by this sudden change. He broke free from Wuyo's hands and grabbed the woman next to him, running away. Don't leave. Tell me where my younger brother has gone. Wuyo saw that this might be the person who knows best what happened to his younger brother. He urgently shouted as he reached out to grab the other person, but before his hand touched them, the crowded crowd beside him almost knocked Wuyo to the ground. By the time Wuyo stood firm and looked up, the couple had already been submerged in the chaotic crowd and lost their figure. Can an 8-year-old child survive in such a situation of sudden earthquakes and chaotic crowds? Not to mention children like Wucho, there are many tragic stampede accidents that can be seen within the reach of Wucho's eyes. The person in front of them was knocked down by the person behind them and then stepped on the body of the fallen person without any hesitation. At first, the people on the ground could still let out a mournful cry and struggle to stand up, but soon they would lose all the ability to struggle and fall to the ground. The person on the ground stepped on their own body without a sound. In the chaotic scene, the only person who could possibly know where his younger brother was going ran away again. Worry-free was extremely anxious and had no clue, and wanted to continue asking if he had seen his brother. But now, who would stop and answer himself in this situation? Perhaps. Maybe Xiaoqiu was just joking with herself and hiding in a corner. Unexpectedly, Wuyo turned around and began to search around the corners, braving the continuous dust falling from her head. She searched and shouted her brother's name loudly, but where could she find it? Xiaoqiu. Younger brother. After a few minutes, Wuyo sat in a corner, dumbfounded, murmuring softly, tears streaming uncontrollably. Although he didn't want to believe it, his only reason told him that he couldn't find his brother here anymore. The roaring sound kept ringing, and large walls inside the mall began to fall off. If people live in certain parts of the southwest, they will definitely have doubts. This is not what earthquakes should look like, but this is a coastal city in the east. The most serious earthquake casualties recorded here were caused by people jumping off buildings in urgent need to survive. So, when people feel the shaking of the mall, the first thing that comes to mind is an earthquake. In such a chaotic and dangerous environment, there is little hope for my younger brother to survive no matter where he is. At this point, worry-free has become hopeless, and all that comes to mind and in front of me is the tragic appearance of my younger brother lying on the ground covered in blood. Did you just give up like this? Could your younger brother have already escaped from the mall? No. You can't give up. Even if there is 1 in 10,000 hope, you can't give up. Your younger brother is still so young, and there are plenty of beautiful times waiting for him to enjoy. Thinking of this, Worry-free's dull eyes lit up, and his only thought at this moment was to find your younger brother. At this moment, the 5th floor of the shopping mall was empty except for Wuyo, who had some injured people lying on the ground groaning softly. Looking around, there were overturned tables and chairs and broken storefronts. Wuyo stood up and ran towards the stairs. His only hope now was that his younger brother had passed through or escaped from the mall, which was also his own motivation to survive. Before arriving at the stairs, Wuyo noticed that the staircase downstairs had already broken and looked down. With a height of 4 meters and no place to rely on it, there was a large amount of scattered gravel and some glass tables and chairs on the 4th floor. If you jump to the 4th floor like this, there may not be any good results. The architectural style of the mall is a hollow design from the 1st floor to the top, so in the Wuyo position, you can clearly see a large group of people gathering on the 2nd floor. It is possible that the stairs from the 2nd floor to the 1st floor have also broken. At this time, many people on the 2nd floor jump to the 1st floor without considering the danger, and the result is naturally not optimistic. Most people fall to the ground and cannot get up. Even some people in the back specifically followed the person in front and jumped to the same position. It was obvious that their purpose was to use the person in front as a cushion, hoping to use the body of the person in front of them as a cushion to cushion themselves. The ugly side of human nature was openly revealed in the face of disasters. Wuyo turned around and looked around, seeing a home goods store not far away. Without hesitation, Wuyo quickly ran over. After entering the store, my eyes immediately stared at a nearly 4-meter-high floor curtain hanging on the wall, and ran up to stretch out my hand to pull it. With a loud clatter, the curtains were pulled down by Wuyo. Wuyo picked up the curtains and turned around to run to the center of the floor, finding a relatively sturdy guardrail. Wuyo forcefully wrapped one end of the curtains around the guardrail, and the other end hung down along the floor. Looking at the position of the tail end of the curtains, it was just over 1 meter away from the 4th floor. If you let go of this height and jump down, there should be no danger. Without hesitation, Wuyo grabbed the curtain and slid down towards the direction of the 4th floor. She found the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com and slid to the end of the curtain. Wuyo looked down and swung the curtain a few times to find a relatively clean ground. Her hand relaxed and jumped down. A height of over 1 meter is not a big deal for young people like Wuyo, as they can safely land there. But then he turned worry-free and gave himself a hard pat on the thigh. He was too anxious and didn't think too much earlier. Now the 4th floor is down, but what's next? Are there 3 more floors below? How can we get down? The classification of shops in the shopping mall is relatively concentrated. What kinds of goods are sold on each floor are planned. The 4th floor is a leisure area such as some restaurants. Where are the shops selling household goods that let them carry floor curtains? Without worrying about continuing to feel frustrated, the rumbling outside has become increasingly intense in this short period of time, and the falling speed of the internal walls of the mall has also become faster. Worry-free turned around and ran towards the nearest store. Even without curtains, there could definitely be some alternative things to find. As long as there is something 2 meters long enough to withstand one's own weight, it can be used as a rope. As for what it is, it doesn't matter. Bang! A loud noise echoed directly above the head of Wuyo, who had just run into the store. Wuyo looked up and saw a large piece of roof breaking apart. Before Wuyo could react, this huge reinforced concrete roof fell with a loud bang. In just about a second, there is no worry-free time to make any response, let alone dodge. Perhaps in another world, our family can reunite, right? This is the last thought in Worry-Free's heart at this moment. Dust was flying, and the place where Wuyo stood was hit by the roof, causing a choking smoke. Wuyo completely lost consciousness. What Wuyo didn't know was that at the moment when he lost consciousness, a beam of light lit up on his chest, enveloping Wuyo's entire body. When the light disappears, the carefree figure in place also disappears at the same time. Chapter 5, Wake Up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A beam of dazzling sunlight shone down the window on the face of a young man lying in bed. The young man's tightly closed eyes twitched slightly and slowly opened them, indicating that the young man was carefree. A few seconds later, Worry-Free, who had just woken up and was still in a state of confusion, completely regained consciousness and also remembered the last scene before losing consciousness. I'm dead. Where is this? Heaven or hell? In the hearts of all earthlings, if there is another place after human death, then there are only two places. Heaven and hell. With this thought in mind, Worry-Free slowly stood up and looked around at the environment. This is a small wooden house with a small area, about 20 square meters to the eye. The walls around it are built by stacking thick tree trunks side by side, with small square windows on 3 sides and a wooden door that also exudes a rustic atmosphere on one side. The furnishings inside the house are also very simple, with a wooden bed facing the wall of the door and old but very clean bedding. On the left side of the door, there is a table and a chair against the wall. There is a desk lamp, a pen holder, and several books on the table. On the right is a cabinet, with a cloth curtain covering the lower part of the cabinet, making it impossible to see anything behind the curtain. Above is a machine that looks like a radio, and there are also some bottles and jars that I don't know what they contain. On the wall on the right, there is a wooden shelf with a plastic basin placed on top, and there is also a towel hanging on the shelf, which should be used for washing. There is also a wooden frame on the wall on the left opposite, but it should be a clothes hanger because you can see your coat hanging on it. The sunlight also shines in from this window on the left. Seeing his coat, Worry-Free lowered his head and looked at himself. He was still wearing his original clothes, jeans, a long-sleeved T-shirt, and his sports shoes were on the bedside floor. I put on my shoes and moved around on the ground for a while, but I didn't feel any discomfort. Recalling my last memories, Worry-Free feels strange. How could I have been intact in that situation at the time? With the weight of the huge roof at that time, it was inevitable for me to break my tendons and bones when I was hit and turned into a meat patty, right? But looking at myself now, I can't be any healthier. Not only was there no injury, but I felt an inexhaustible force in my body. After these few minutes of soothing, my brain also felt particularly refreshed. What is this place? Look at this environment full of rural and pastoral atmosphere. Even if it's not heaven, it shouldn't be hell, right? Wuyo chuckled at himself in a low voice. No matter what happened, no matter where we are here, since our consciousness has regained clarity, let it be as it is now. Firstly, it is necessary to understand what has happened before deciding how to face it. Wuyo tidied up her mood and walked towards the door. With a squeak sound, the door was pushed open and Worry-Free stepped out of the room. In front of the eyes were tall trees, as well as small wooden houses under the trees. The houses were not high, and the tallest one was only 2 floors, without anyone being seen. Oh. Not right. Wuyo lowered her head slightly and suddenly noticed a little girl about 6 or 7 years old standing in front of her. At this moment, the little girl was biting her thumb and looking at her with a pair of water-sensitive big eyes that flickered and flickered. Shao. Grandpa. Grandpa. That person is awake. Just as Wuyo was about to say hello and inquire about her situation, she saw the little girl turn around and run towards the distance, shouting loudly while running. Ah! Worry-Free looked at the little girl's distant figure and withdrew his hand, which was about to touch her hair, and scratched his own head to cover up his embarrassment. As the little girl shouted for a while, a group of children first emerged from various wooden houses. The older ones were in their teens, and the younger ones were 3 or 4 years old. They ran in a swarm towards the direction of Wuyo, until they stood 5 or 6 meters away and gathered together to look towards Wuyo. Their eyes were filled with curiosity and a little fear. Not long after, some adults followed the children out, and they only walked up to their own children, holding them with their hands to prevent them from moving closer to Worry-Free. There were no other actions, let alone voices or worries. Get out. Get out. What are you all doing around here? What's there to see? With a rough voice, the crowd parted and a person walked out of it. Still holding the little girl who ran away just now. Worry-free speculates that this may be the grandfather in the little girl's mouth. But Wuyo looked at this man with black hair and a straight and sturdy body, but he couldn't even connect with the word grandpa. Is the young man awake? Is there anything uncomfortable in his body? The man, known as grandpa, walked up to Worry-free and looked up and down, smiling and asking. Thank you, sir. I feel quite good looking for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. May I ask where this is? How did I get here? Wuyo felt that the people here didn't seem to have any ill intentions towards her, so she politely responded and couldn't wait to ask. Don't you know? Sigh. I have to start over this matter from the beginning, and I have many questions to ask you. Alright, let's not stand here anymore. Let's go in and speak slowly. You all have dispersed, what should you do? Don't surround yourself here. The man said to Wuyo, then turned his head and shouted to the crowd around him before crossing Wuyo and walking towards the house. Seeing this, Wuyo smiled kindly at the people around and quickly followed the man into the room. You can also sit down, let's sit down and talk slowly. After entering the room, the man walked over to the table and turned the only chair in the room, sitting on it one by one. He then reached out to pick up the little girl who followed him and placed her on his lap. He pointed to the direction of the bed and said to Wuyo. Young man, where are you from? How did you come to us? And how did you faint on our wilderness? The man began to ask without worrying. Grandpa, actually I'm also curious. Although my body doesn't feel any problems now, I can't remember the memories before I woke up. Wuyo didn't tell the truth because he clearly remembered the scene before he fell into a coma, which was in the Wanda Plaza in Haicheng, but he woke up here inexplicably. I can't be sure what consequences this strange thing will bring when I tell the truth, so I can only find an excuse for amnesia. Oh. Have you lost your memory? This is not easy to handle. Do you have any previous memories? The man continued to ask suspiciously, his eyes fixed on Worry-free's eyes, as if he wanted to see something from Worry-free's eyes. Chapter 6. Freshmen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Well, I don't remember much, I only remember my name is Li Wuyo. Before I fell into a coma, I was looking for my lost younger brother. As for how I fell into a coma, I can't remember where I came from. Because my parents passed away early, Wuyo, who was still underage at the time, took on the responsibility of taking care of my younger brother and family. For the past 2 years, I have also been doing odd jobs, so I have rich social experience and my mind is higher than that of my peers. Faced with the questioning of this unfamiliar man, Worry-free can fully respond with an unchanged expression. Well, it turns out like this. The man didn't see anything wrong from his Worry-free face, lowered his head for a moment of contemplation, and then looked up to continue speaking. Well, since you can't remember your origin now, let's temporarily settle down in our village. When do you recover your memory in the future, we can consider other options. What do you think? I can't help but feel homeless now. Grandpa, you not only saved me but also kindly took me in. Thank you so much. I just don't know what you call me, Grandpa. The man said, Worry-free, and of course he agreed with joy. Li Wuyo, right. So, on behalf of the 78th Wilderness Settlement, I welcome you to join. I am Wang Hu, the captain of the 78th Settlement, but we wilderness people are accustomed to giving our settlement a name and calling the captain the village chief. So we are also called Shijian Village, and you can call me Grandpa Wang or Grandpa Village Chief. That's my granddaughter Xialinglong. Upon hearing Wuyo's willingness to stay, the village chief named Wang Hu became enthusiastic. He first gave a simple self-introduction and then took a photo of the little girl sitting on his lap to introduce himself. I'll call you Grandpa Wang instead, which makes it more friendly. But I don't think you're old enough, so I think calling you uncle would be more appropriate, said Wuyo with a smile. Uncle. Ha, you're really good at talking. I'm 78 years old this year, and at my age, not to mention being your grandfather, even a great-grandfather is more than enough. Wang Hu laughed heartily and tapped Wu Yo with his finger. Ah! Prince, you're already 78 years old this year. It's really not like that. Judging from your body, I thought you were only around 50 at most. This time, Worry-Free sighed sincerely. This Wang Hu had shiny black hair, a strong and sturdy body, and walked with a lively demeanor. Even the wrinkles on his face were not very obvious. Even if he is 40 years old, some people will still believe him. Pwai. Brother Wu Yo, you really know how to flatter, I'm not ashamed. The little girl Wang Linglong, who had been silent since hearing Wu Yo's words, suddenly let out a little cry, and her index finger also scratched her face a few times to show her mockery of Wu Yo. Linglong. How can you speak? Don't be impolite. I saw Linglong mocking Wang Hu and scolding him in a loud voice, while also patting the little girl's shoulder, but it looked full of indulgence no matter what. It's okay, Grandpa Wang. Xiaolingling is very cute, but I really didn't expect you to be so old. Haha. There's nothing strange about this. You know, I'm a level 5 martial arts cultivator, and living 200 years with my cultivation is not a problem at all. If we calculate my lifespan based on an average person's lifespan, it's not too much to say that I'm still middle-aged. Wang Hu explained, seeing that Wu Yo really didn't mean to flatter him. Alright, since you're willing to stay, you'll gradually become familiar with the situation in the village. Although you've just woken up and it doesn't seem like you have any physical problems, you still need to rest. I'll leave first, and you can rest for a while. I've been unconscious for so long and you're hungry, right? Later, I'll ask Linglong to bring you some food. If you have anything you want to know, you can ask Linglong or ask her to bring you to me. I'll leave first. The basic situation has already been understood by each other, and Wang Hu didn't stop any longer. He stood up and said to Wu Yo, turning around and taking Linglong, he walked out. Okay Grandpa Wang, take your time. Wu Yo quickly got up and followed the grandparents to the door. Standing at the door, watching the two of them walk away without worry, turning around and closing the door, his face darkened. I noticed a lot of information in my brief conversation just now. For example, in wilderness settlements, there is no such place on Earth, and there is also martial arts cultivation. Apart from some novels, there is no such thing as cultivation on Earth. This kind of thing that is different from common sense on Earth is revealing an answer to Worry-Free, this is not Earth. Did you encounter a time travel event in the novel? But the people here speak Mandarin, which is also standard Mandarin. Is this too strange? Worry-Free thought to himself as he walked to the chair next to the table and sat down, then picked up a book on the table and flipped it over. The text in the book, a brief account of the strange beast, is also in simplified Chinese. Looking for the book on zhaozuiyuan.com, however, the title of the book looks like a fantasy novel no matter how it looks, and I started reading it with worry-free curiosity. After the Great Cataclysm, all animals around the world, except humans, have undergone a certain degree of mutation. This mutation has brought us a huge crisis as humans on Earth. However, it has also brought us huge benefits. How to deal with the crisis and how to obtain benefits. This requires us to have a comprehensive understanding of mutated beasts. This book aims to help people have a preliminary understanding of mutated beasts, let people know what kind of situations can be fought for and what kind of situations must be avoided from crisis. Finally, a sentence from Marshall Lee is attached to all humanity for mutual encouragement. Self-improvement, the human race will always exist. Li Weimin. Opening the first page of the book, there is only one chapter introduction. But it was this brief introduction that plunged Wu Yo into deeper confusion. Earth. It's still Earth. Worry-Free murmured softly. Discovering that I am still carefree on Earth can be said to be a mix of flavors. I feel both fortunate and disappointed to find myself still on Earth, but fortunately, I am still on Earth. My home. Although from the information we have learned before, we don't know what era it is anymore. It's impossible for us to live in the same era, but as long as we are still on Earth, we will feel that we are not too far away from our parents and younger brother. What is lost is still on Earth. Although still on Earth, the distance of time is the most difficult to cross. Do I still have a chance to find my younger brother? Without continuing to read the book, the shock brought by just one chapter introduction to Wuyo was enough for him to digest for a long time. With his back resting on the chair, he slowly closed his eyes, and a crystal-clear tear fell from the corner of his eye onto his cheek. Worry-free. Having gained a new student, but where should we go? Chapter 7, Clich É S. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Squeak. The sound of pushing the door rang, and Xilinglong walked in with a tray. Brother Wuyo, dinner is here. Linglong saw Wuyo sweetly greeting him sitting in a chair and walking towards this side with a tray. Come on. I'll get it. Thank you, little Lingling. Seeing Linglong struggling a bit, she quickly stood up and took the tray, turned around, and placed it on the table. Hey! Brother Wuyo, are you reading a book? Little Linglong, who followed over, immediately saw the book placed in the middle of the table and asked. Oh. Yes, just flip through it casually. By the way, Xilinglong, you know I can't remember many things. Can you tell me about the monster transformation? If someone were to pay attention to Wuyo at this time, they would notice that his face would blush a little. It's a bit embarrassing to hear this 5 or 6-year-old girl say, Wuyo. Mutant beasts. I know this. When adults treat children, they either perfunctorily, spoil, or scold, as it is impossible to have an equal conversation. It's even more impossible to ask for advice. So when Wuyo spoke up and asked, Xilinglong felt that there were things that adults didn't know they needed to ask her for advice, so she naturally wanted to be a teacher again with joy. After the disaster, all animals around the world, except humans, have undergone a certain degree of mutation. This mutation has brought a huge crisis to us humans on Earth. Wait. Just sat upright and prepared to do a detailed understanding of this so-called mutated beast from Xilinglong's mouth, and worry-free realized that something was wrong. Isn't Xilinglong's words the introduction from the book he just read? Well, every word is perfect. It seems that I put in some effort to memorize it. Is the next sentence, but similarly, it has also brought us huge benefits. Wuyo smiled and joked at the little girl. Ah. How do you know? Oh. You just read a book. Oh, anyway, mutated beasts are very bad, very powerful and powerful animals. Little Linglong blushed when she realized that she had failed to become a teacher for the first time and said impatiently. Xilinglong is really impressive. It seems that she studies very hard in her daily life, right? Worry-free couldn't help but make Xilinglong feel too embarrassed, so she took the opportunity to praise her. Of course, Teacher Lu once said, if you don't study hard, you can't become a qualified warrior. I want to become a warrior even more powerful than my grandfather in the future. Hearing the worry-free praise, the little girl suddenly forgot her previous embarrassment and said proudly. Oh. By the way, what is a warrior? Warriors. Warriors are very powerful people. Linglong looked at Wuyo strangely. It seems that Brother Wuyo is quite sick, he doesn't even remember martial artists, the little girl thought to herself and then added in a voice. I specialize in fighting monsters. Ultraman. She shook her head with a bitter smile and muttered in a low voice, still without any very useful information. Ultraman. Who is Ultraman? The little girl's ears were quite sharp, and she heard the worry-free murmur with a curious expression on her face, oh. Ultraman. Ultraman is a very powerful person who specializes in fighting monsters. Worry-free reached out and touched Linglong's little head, perfunctorily saying. How powerful is it? Is it even more powerful than Grandpa? And this name is so strange. Is there someone with the surname A.O. The little girl kept asking like a curious baby. It should be, maybe a little more powerful than Grandpa Wang. Ultraman is his nickname, which means a very powerful man. I don't know his real name exactly. Wuyo couldn't tell the little girl that Ultraman is actually just an anime character, and could only explain it casually. Oh my. If he's even more powerful than Grandpa, he must be a very powerful person. Among the dozens of villages nearby, Grandpa is already the most powerful person. If he's even more powerful than Grandpa, he must be from the city, right? Is he from the satellite city or the central city? The worry-free explanation not only did not end this topic, but also further aroused Xiao Linglong's curiosity. I don't know either, I'm not familiar with him either. It's just that I've heard of him before. You know, I've lost my memory now, and I can't remember too many things. Alright. Let's not talk about him anymore, I'm really a bit hungry. I'll eat something first before we talk. Worry-free had a headache, and this little girl is really difficult to deal with. It's also my fault for being cheap. What are you talking about, Ultraman? Now it can only be pushed to amnesia. Ah. Alright, worry-free brother, you can eat first. Grandpa said your stomach has been empty for a long time and it's not suitable to eat greasy food, so you can't eat too much, so Aunt Wong only ordered you a bowl of noodles. As if afraid that worry-free would be angry when she saw only one bowl of noodles, Xiao Linglong quickly explained. Zhaoshuyuan.com, I know this, thank you, Xiaolinglong. Wuyo naturally knows that her current situation is really not suitable for greasy and full eating. Although Linglong has not yet lost her childlike innocence, Wuyo feels that she is much more sensible than her peers in her time, just like her younger brother Wuyo. If it were him, he would never have thought of explaining this sentence. Seeing that Wuyo had no intention of being angry, Xiaolinglong also let go of her troubled thoughts and smiled happily. Wuyo doesn't know how long she has been unconscious. She didn't feel anything before, but now when she sees what she's eating, she immediately feels hungry. Without further ado, he picked up his chopsticks and quickly finished eating a bowl of noodles. By the way, Xiaolinglong, do you know which year it is now? After finishing the noodles, worry-free still doesn't give up. Ask what year. This always yields useful information, right? Which year is it? This year is 349 years of Nirvana. In just 3 months and 13 days, the Chinese New Year will be celebrated. After that, another month and 7 days will be the annual festival. Grandpa said that the festival was particularly lively and grand, and promised me to take me to the central city for a stroll when the time came. I told you, brother Wu Yu, my brother Lin is so stupid. Last time during the festival, Grandpa also took him to the central city, but when I asked him what the central city was like, he couldn't answer anything. Isn't it in vain? If it were for me, I would definitely remember it firmly. The little girl is very talkative. But worry-free has an impulse to hit the wall. All the little girl's answers to the questions were correct, all in line with her age, but there was no useful information for herself. Ask her about the mutated beast and her backpack, ask her about martial arts cultivation and pull out an Ultraman, and ask her about the year, which is also an unregulated Nirvana era. It seems that in order to obtain useful information, we still need to find other ways. Chapter 8, Clarification. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the early morning, a gentle ray of sunlight shone into the room from the window and onto the sleeping worry-free face. Worry-free eyelids twitched, but he didn't open his eyes. Although half a day and one night have passed, Wuyo still feels a bit reluctant to believe the time travel event in his heart. Even last night, before he fell asleep, he thought to himself that it might just be a dream, right? Perhaps the next day I wake up to see my familiar home in Haicheng, and then I will still wake up as usual to cook and wake up my lazy brother. Although he was well aware that what he had experienced yesterday until now was not a dream but a cruel reality, he still refused to open his eyes. He was afraid that after opening his eyes, his only remaining hope would be shattered. Lying quietly for a while, Wuyo finally opened her eyes. Since things have already happened, avoiding them is not a solution. I always have to face them myself. After thinking through this section without hesitation, I got up, got dressed, got out of bed, walked to the wall, picked up the basin, and walked outside. After a brief understanding yesterday, worry-free found out that the living conditions in the number 78 settlement or Shijian village are very simple. The only water source in the village is a well located in the central square of the village. There are a total of 28 households and 67 people in the village, including 13 orphans, and Xilinglong is one of them. I was also very curious about why there were 13 orphan children in a village with only 67 people. This proportion can be said to be surprisingly high, which is unimaginable in the era I lived in. It wasn't until later, during dinner, that I casually inquired with Aunt Wang, who was responsible for cooking for these orphans, that I finally gained a preliminary understanding of the world. It turns out that this world is not safe. There are a large number of mutated beasts in the wilderness, and the main source of livelihood in the village is hunting mutated beasts to obtain useful resources from them to exchange for living supplies from the city. The parents of these orphans passed away while hunting in the wild. Fortunately, the people in the village are very united, and when orphans appear, the village will be responsible for taking care of them. One reason is that living together in this dangerous world requires mutual support and assistance, and the other reason is that the high casualty rate caused by danger leads to a shortage of population. In the wilderness, every population is precious. That's also why yesterday, when Wang Hu, the village chief, heard that Wuyo Ken was staying, he immediately appeared very happy. In addition, Wuyo also learned that the current Earth suddenly encountered a disaster on a certain day in the AD era. The cause of the disaster was that hostile sides from other civilizations in the universe were at war when they suddenly came to Earth for some unknown reasons. One party used some means to turn all animals on Earth, except humans, into mutated beasts. They were cruel, and all creatures they saw would be torn apart by them. On the other hand, they were much more friendly to the humans on Earth. They first rescued the panicked humans in disasters, and then taught them the methods of cultivation, providing various advanced weapons, and working together with the humans to resist the endless mutated beasts. These cultivators are the warriors that Wuyo heard yesterday. For a long time since the disaster began, the survival of human beings on Earth was millions of times more difficult than it is now, and it can even be said that they were facing the crisis of forgetting the race and extinction at any time. It was not until 20 years later that a large number of warriors grew among the human beings on Earth, and the most famous of them was the only great commander among the people on Earth, Li Weimin. When talking about Li Weimin, you can clearly feel the excitement and admiration of Aunt Wang. Afterwards, General Li Weimin and his like-minded companions led humanity to gradually defeat the mutated beasts and established 30 human central cities around the world, with several satellite cities outside the central cities. Beyond the radiation range of cities, they are called wilderness, and there are also numerous human settlements on the wilderness. As for why not gather all humans in the central city and satellite city, Aunt Wang said she doesn't know either. Anyway, this is how our ancestors have come about for generations. In commemoration, humans refer to the year when the 30 central cities were built as the first year of Nirvana, meaning the rebirth of humanity. As for which year was the first year of Nirvana in the AD, Aunt Wang felt embarrassed to say that she didn't study well and didn't remember it. Although it's just simple information, it's enough to worry free and connect the Earth I live on with the current one. When I heard the date of the disaster, worry-free knew what the so-called earthquake was before I traveled. Because that day was the day when extraterrestrial civilization descended on Earth. Although it is not yet known which year the first year of Nirvana was, it is probably not too far away. Looking for the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com, it is now 349 years of Nirvana, which means that it has been about 400 years since the era where Wuyo lived. When estimating this number, Worry-Free felt a wave of melancholy. 400 years. The longest dynasty in Chinese history is just like this. Walking towards the well with a basin in hand, I kept encountering some villagers who were doing odd jobs. Although they were not familiar with each other or even introduced to each other, they were all very enthusiastic. When I saw Wuyo walking by, some smiled kindly, while others greeted me politely, saying, "Good morning, young man." Wuyo responded politely one by one. The group of orphans who are most familiar with Wuyo now are those who have children running over all the way and shouting loudly, "Hello, Wuyo brother." Then, without exception, they will quietly add a sentence after saying "Hello, Wuyo brother, can you tell us about Ultraman later during breakfast?" Worry-Free cannot help but feel overwhelmed. Last night when we had dinner, everyone was a bit afraid of the new orphan, but when the orphans chatted, Xiaolonglong's words, "I must become someone as powerful as Ultraman when I grow up," instantly made Wuyo the center of everyone's attention. These children, who are only 11 or 12 years old, are pestering Worry-Free to ask Ultraman how powerful he is. What does it look like? Male and female. In the end, Aunt Wang came out to clear the siege and drove them all away, so that Wuyo could finish the meal well. After fetching water and returning to the room to wash up, I walked to the cafeteria prepared for the orphans in the village and ate while dealing with the familiar orphans. Without any worries, I couldn't help but think of my younger brother. Combining the eerie events of her own journey and the sudden disappearance of her younger brother, as well as the abnormal expressions of the couple at the time, a glimmer of hope rose in Wuyo's heart. Perhaps, if my younger brother didn't die, would he also travel to this world like himself? Chapter 9. Cultivation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Stand firm. Legs apart, waist down. Look at Linglong. Can't you even catch up with a little girl? On the small square in the center of Shijian village, a large group of children squatted on horseback steps under the guidance of a middle-aged man. These children are as young as Linglong and only 4 or 5 years old, while the older ones are only 7 or 8 years old. And Wuyo stands out particularly among these children. His body is already much taller than his peers, and he is also much older than these children. Therefore, standing in the middle of the children gives a particularly abrupt feeling. At this moment, Wuyo was sweating profusely and squatting on horseback, being harshly scolded by Uncle Qin, who was responsible for teaching them today. It has been 7 days since Wuyo arrived in this world, and in these days, Wuyo has become familiar with other villagers in the village. Through these few days of understanding, Wuyo knows that this world is very dangerous, and the only thing that can protect oneself is strong personal strength, which is cultivation. When the village chief prince found out that Wuyo did not have a martial arts level, he was clearly a bit disappointed. Because based on past experience, if a person cannot successfully advance to level 1 martial arts cultivation before the age of 16, they are likely to be an ordinary person in their lifetime. At best, they are slightly stronger than normal people, but compared to true martial arts cultivation, they are far inferior. For an ordinary person, their life may only be limited to a small village and they will never have the strength to see a broader world in the wilderness. This point of worry-free nature was not willingly accepted, so under his strong suggestion, Grandpa Wang finally agreed to let him and the children in the village practice together. The so-called cultivation, in the early stage, is to develop the potential of the human body and focus on improving explosive power. The word cultivation sounds cool, but it's only when worry-free truly joins in that it realizes its pain. The most basic cultivation is squatting, running circles, and punching sandbags. Get up before dawn every day and practice until before breakfast. The daily concentrated training time is about 2 hours, during which the martial artists in the village take turns to guide. Then, after breakfast, the whole day will depend on the individual's level of effort. If you want to train alone, you can play around, and even if you sleep, no one will take care of you. But after a few days, worry-free found that even children like Linglong, who are at their most playful age, rarely slack off. Except for necessary rest, most of the time is spent on hard training. This would never have happened on Earth before worry-free travel. Worry-free believes that it may be because humans in this world have known what kind of world they are facing since childhood. Wuyo was not taken care of just because he was already an adult, and even under the special instructions of the village chief, Grandpa Wang, they were responsible for teaching their villagers to be particularly strict with Wuyo every day. In Grandpa Wang's words, a clumsy bird flies first, and diligence can make up for clumsiness. Since Wuyo did not successfully advance to level 1 martial arts cultivation before the age of 16 and was unwilling to return to mediocrity for a lifetime, it could only be more severe and hardworking. Wuyo himself will not get angry because of being scolded. Apart from being strict during training every day, the people in the village are very friendly to Wuyo. He is not looked down upon because he is still an ordinary person when he reaches adulthood, nor is he excluded because he is a new member. This moved Wuyo very much. Soon, the routine morning exercise ended. When Uncle Chin shouted, "Disband," a group of children collapsed on the ground. Worry-free and lifeless, he lay on the ground panting heavily. "Ha! Ha! Brother Wuyo, can we go test our strength after breakfast?" Linglong, lying next to Wuyo, gasped for breath and said to her. "All right. Let's go together after dinner later. I feel like my strength has also increased a lot in the past few days." Upon hearing Linglong's words, I agreed without worry. There are specialized instruments for testing strength in the village, and according to Wuyo's understanding, the most basic condition for achieving martial arts level 1 is to have an explosive power of 100 kilograms. However, when Wuyo first started training, they tested it once and the result was only 35 kilograms. I have also questioned the threshold for explosive power of 100 kilograms, because in my own era, some professional athletes can completely achieve this step. Can they all be considered martial arts practitioners? The answer given by Grandpa Wang to this question is naturally not that simple. The strength of ordinary people can indeed reach or even exceed this value through persistent training, but there is still a crucial step to becoming a true martial artist, and that is awakening. When Wuyo asked Grandpa Wang how he woke up, the answer he received was simply, "Take a bite of food and don't set your sights too high." The children lying on the ground rested for a while and then gradually got up and left. Worry-free looked around and felt a wave of shame as there were only a few people left. They were much older than them, but their recovery speed was much slower. It seems that they still need to work harder to exercise. Get up and return to your own room, go to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to fetch water and wash up, then go to the cafeteria for a meal. After finishing the meal, Wuyo and Linglong went to the village's cultivation room together. This cultivation room has only been visited once, and he estimates it may be the largest house in the entire village. It is also the only brick and stone structure house in the village. The house is approximately over 100 square meters, and it is said to be a cultivation room. In fact, no one usually comes here to practice. Inside, there are the most precious and valuable cultivation and testing equipment in the village. It is said that only villagers who are about to reach the threshold of promotion are eligible to use those precious cultivation equipment, but testing equipment can be used casually. "Brother Wuyo, will you come first or will I come first?" Linglong asked as they stood next to an instrument. "You go ahead and let Brother Wuyo see how much progress our little Lingling has made," Wuyo said with a smile. "Okay. I'll come first. But if Brother Wuyo can't match my data later, it'll be embarrassing. If you come first, I might still be able to let you go." Linglong playfully said and stood in front of the instrument. This instrument is specifically designed to detect explosive power. On the left is an upright rubber target, which connects to a tall pillar on the right. The pillar is made of metal and has a glass window on the front, with some numerical markings on the scale. Inside the glass window, there is a thin glass tube. When the tester forcefully punches the left target, a mercury column will rise up inside the right glass tube. By then, you only need to observe the scale value at which the mercury column rises to its highest position to determine the explosive power of that punch. Ha! Ha! Xiao Linglong took a deep breath and then punched out with a loud shout, hitting the target fiercely. Wu You took a cold breath as she stared at the rapidly rising mercury column beside her. Chapter 10. Growth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 5 days ago, when Wu You first started training, he tested his explosive power at 35 kilograms, but he was really surprised when he saw the mercury column stuck at the 50 mark position. Is this still a 5-year-old child? This data was already something that only stronger adults could achieve in the era they originally lived in. No wonder Linglong said earlier that she was afraid of losing face. It turned out that it was really not just a joke. Ah! It's been half a year and I've only grown 5 kilograms. The shocked Wu You was pulled back to her senses by Linglong's voice, and turned to look at Linglong with an unhappy expression on her face. You're only 5 years old, aren't you satisfied with the explosive power of 50 kilograms? If you grow at a rate of 5 kilograms for 6 months, you can reach the threshold of awakening before you're 10 years old. Besides, the growth of your strength will be faster when you're older. Wu You really envies Linglong a bit. According to his understanding, the vast majority of people can reach that threshold around the age of 15. Is this little Linglong a genius? It's not a worry-free brother. Grandpa said that human strength is our own potential, and if we don't receive any training, our potential will naturally be released as we age. However, the purpose of our training is to release this potential in advance, so for those of us who have been training for a long time, there is no saying that age will bring strength enhancement. Our strength growth peak period is in the 2nd and 3rd years of training. For example, I started training at the age of 4, so my strength growth peak period is in 5 and 6 years old. But now it's the end of the year, and after the new year, I will be 6 years old. If my strength cannot increase rapidly during this period, then I will be 6 years old. In the future, we will have to rely on the accumulation of time to gradually improve, said Xiao Linglong with a slightly gloomy expression. Ha, Xilingling, don't you seem to be good at math? Seeing Linglong's expression, she laughed heartily and joked. Why isn't it okay? He's not happy now. Brother Wu You, you're still laughing, but I'm ignoring you. Seeing Wu You joke, she pouted her head and turned to the side, no longer looking at Wu You. Alright, Xilingling. Brother Wu You apologizes to you, but you really miscalculated. Wu You reached out and tugged at Linglong's little arm before explaining to her. I asked you, Linglong. You said you started training at the age of 4, so did you start after the Chinese New Year or after your birthday? Ah. After celebrating her birthday. What does it matter? Upon hearing Worry-Free's words, Linglong immediately forgot that she was still angry and turned her head curiously to ask. Of course it's related. We have 2 algorithms for calculating age, one is the full year and the other is the virtual year. The full year is calculated based on the day of birth, and the virtual year is calculated based on the Chinese New Year. Do you know this? I know, but I still don't understand. Oh, Brother Wu You, hurry up and say it, I'm so anxious. Wu You's words made Linglong even more curious, and her 2 little hands reached out to embrace Wu You's arm, constantly shaking. Don't worry, listen to me. I heard you say a few days ago that you will have your birthday next month, it's your 5th birthday, right? And you started training after your 4th birthday, which means you have only been training for less than a year now. So, actually, you haven't reached the peak of your strength growth yet. Seeing Xilinglong's anxious expression, I didn't hesitate to explain the truth. In fact, the calculation method for Chinese birthdays is a bit difficult for a child to understand. For example, Linglong, her birthday is very young and it's already the end of the year. That is to say, she celebrated the Chinese New Year shortly after her 4th birthday last year. According to the calculation method of virtual age, she was just 4 years old and soon turned 5. In Linglong's view, she was already 5 years old after the Chinese New Year last year, and soon after, she would be 6 years old. However, in fact, she hasn't even reached 5 years old yet. After listening to the worry-free explanation, Linglong lowered her head and first reached out her right hand to count with her fingers. While counting, she murmured something in a low voice. When she finished counting, she reached out her left hand to count again. After a full 2 minutes, Linglong suddenly looked up excitedly and said to Wuyo, "Ah! It's true. I've only been training for less than a year, and Brother Wuyo is still impressive. Ha, since I've figured it out, it's okay. Don't be unhappy this time, right?" "I'm not unhappy. Alright, let's not talk about me anymore. Now it's your turn to test, Brother Wuyo." "Humph, I remember you tested 35 kilograms 5 days ago." To avoid her embarrassment, Xilingling immediately changed the topic and attempted to shift this embarrassment onto Wuyo. To be honest, the current worry-free situation is a bit awkward. Although he has been training hard these days, he can clearly feel that the strength in his body is becoming more and more abundant. But he doesn't think there will be much improvement in just 5 days. Why don't we just forget it? I've only been testing for a few days now, and it's a waste of time to test again now. I'll follow the village's requirements to test every 6 months. Wuyo naturally didn't want to lose face in front of the little girl and wanted to get by. "No, no, no, you must test it, Brother Wuyo, otherwise I will be angry." The little girl is still very clever. She knows very well that the only way to avoid embarrassment is to make Wuyo feel embarrassed together. "Okay, then I'll test it." Wuyo saw that he couldn't get over it, so he reluctantly agreed. Before reaching the target, Wuyo stood still and took a deep breath. In fact, Wuyo is also very curious about his training results in the past few days. Whether it is the level of danger in this world or the faint hope that his younger brother is still alive, he urgently wants to improve his strength. Ha! With a loud shout from Wuyo, he swung his fist fiercely and hit the target. Then Worry-Free quickly turned his head and looked at the continuously rising mercury column beside him, only to see that the mercury column began to rise rapidly, constantly crossing each scale. 10, at 20, 30, and 35, when Wuyo saw that the mercury column had already exceeded the previous value, her heart began to tense. Her eyes were tightly fixed on the gradually slow rising speed, and her right hand unconsciously clenched her fist, as if this could make the mercury column rise higher. When the mercury column finally stopped at 60 marks, Worry-Free was stunned. "Wow! 60 kilograms. Brother Wuyo, you're so amazing." Linglong beside her shouted loudly, pulling Wuyo back to reality, who was in shock. Worry-Free has an estimate of its own improvement, but it would never have thought it would be so much. In 5 days, it has increased the explosive power by 25 kilograms, which raises serious doubts about whether the machine is malfunctioning. Under normal circumstances, a normal person would never have such a significant improvement in such a short period of time, but this mechanical-powered instrument, although old, is the most resistant and practical, and can easily avoid problems. So, what's the reason for my exceeding average improvement speed now? Is it related to time travel? Worry-Free Psychology secretly guessed.